Tuesday, September 27th, 2016. Maneco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. I'd like to talk today about the big long. And what does that mean? Well, I guess it's my way of talking about The Big Short, which is a movie that was made last year about the financial crisis, the subprime crisis in '08. Very interesting movie. Basically, there's two main characters. Mike Baum, who ran a hedge fund in New York, and Dr. Michael Berry, who also ran like a fund in California. And they both worked out that the subprime mortgage market, the mortgage-backed securities subprime market was a complete fraud. And they got, the banks, big banks, Goldman Sachs, Deutsche Bank, Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan, they got all these banks to write these credit default swaps on these mortgage-backed securities because they realized it was a complete fraud and that it was all going to collapse, and it was going to start in '07 because the adjustable rate mortgages were going to kick in '07. And the interesting thing about this movie is that the bankers were really happy to write these credit default swaps for them because that was back in '06, '05, '06, and they thought, these guys are crazy. This is never going to happen. And eventually it happened, of course, and they did very well from their trades. But during the trade, though, it was difficult. It was, how can I say? It's a little bit like the gold market has been for many years, even before the financial crisis. We can tell that there's manipulation and that there's obfuscation of the market and value. And in the subprime market in '07, when the mortgages started going bad, these CDOs didn't move and the banks would not move their prices. And they kept asking the people who, Dr. Michael Berry and Mark Baum, to actually pay premium. The market, the underlying securities were dropping in value, so their their credit default swaps should have gone up, and the banks kept saying, "Oh no, it hasn't moved. It hasn't moved." And these guys worked out. They finally said, "This is fraudulent. It's completely the system, and Wall Street is completely rotten." And they were right. And at the end, the government and the Treasury had to bail out the system because it was going to collapse. The world would be a lot different today. And it's interesting that in the movie, towards the end, the guy says, $5 trillion were lost in investments and, all the data and details. And then he said hundreds of bankers went to jail. The banks were broken up. The mortgage-backed securities and derivatives market became regulated. And then he said, "Oh, sorry, no, that didn't happen." So, one other thing that I like to talk about that Mark Baum said, and he made a lot of money, but he was very how can I say, he knew the system was rotten. He took the profit, and he said that, this was back in '08. He said, in a few years' time, they've, the government and the bankers have had the taxpayer bail them out for their fraud and greed. And he said, in a few years' time, they're going to blame immigrants and poor people. And by that, he means, immigrants and also people who have depend on entitlements or welfare. Not that I'm saying I agree with the welfare state, but it's the system we have. And yes, and he was completely right, Mark Baum. Look at all the anti-immigration rhetoric, notwithstanding, the Syrian refugees or the ISIS refugees. I'm just talking in general about, in the UK and other countries. Nigel Farage for UKIP, saying that the problem with the economy is that we have immigrants, but no one, Nigel Farage never touches upon the fact that we've had to double our national debt in the UK and in the US to bail out these bankers. And they even say in the movie at the end, that they bailed out the banks and the banks gave themselves even bigger bonuses. So what is the big long now? Well, in my opinion, it still remains gold. That's the big long. And the interesting thing about this movie, and I recommend people watch it, I watched it on Netflix. It's the second time I watched it, but it's good to watch it again. And yeah, I think one thing that was interesting, some of these guys that made a lot of money, they were almost not able to get out of their trades because of counterparty risk. For example, there's two young guys who ran a small fund, and they'd put money they'd put their trades through Bear Stearns, and Bear Stearns almost collapsed, had to be taken over. But they were able to sell their position to another bank, UBS. So they ended up okay, but it was a close call. And also Mark Baum, he was able to get out and make a lot of money because Hank Paulson and the White House, President Bush, and Ben Bernanke, the Fed, they engineered a bailout of the whole system. So he was able to get out. Morgan Stanley, which was the bank he traded through, didn't go under. So what I'm trying to say is that I think the next crisis, I'm not sure if there's going to be anyone to bail out the counterparties. So if you do have paper investments, financial assets, I'm not saying everything is going to, disappear, but I wouldn't be too comfortable with it. And that's why people need to have physical gold and physical silver as well. And yeah, there are people who say, invest in this gold fund. They hold real physical gold. But, in the end of the day, it's not yours if it's not in your hands. Of course, you have to store it somewhere safe. Yeah, that's it. I think that's, the next thing, the big long is going to be protecting your wealth and having tangible wealth, not only gold, but if you have your house paid for with no mortgage, that's wealth. Or if you have land or a farm or, anything that's tangible. So today is frustrating day. I noticed that a few minutes before the COMEX open, which is 8:20 New York time, around 8:12, gold was smacked down, the futures, from around 1335 down to 1330. And now they've smashed it down further to 1327. It's very frustrating. Watch this movie and you see how frustrated these guys who eventually did well, Mark Baum and Dr. Michael Berry, they knew that, these banks on Wall Street were manipulating things, and so to those people out there, like Bob Moriarty from 321gold.com, which is a website I've read for a long time. He disparages people who say that gold is manipulated. I think he's completely wrong. I don't think they're gonna be able to do it forever. In the movie, it looked, the people who were bet against the system, in the beginning, the trades weren't going right because the banks were manipulating the markets. They thought a bit like people nowadays who are invested in gold, this is never going to happen. They're rigging the system, but I think eventually it will unravel. So that's the big long physical gold, physical silver, some cryptocurrencies as well, Bitcoin, because that's out of the financial system. So there you have it, the big long. That's a trade that will, the world is going to look even more uncertain than in 2008. But there's, like the Chinese says, there's opportunity as well, in times of crisis. So if you enjoy my videos, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. And if you'd like to donate to my channel, I accept Bitcoin, dollars, or any other currency. There's some links below in the description for the donations. Take care. Bye.